Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring some new products from the March release from Picket Fence Studios. I'm going to be using the Royal Sweet Peas, totally like what I immediately gravitated toward. And then I am also using the, well, I showed you the 6x8 tree bark stencil, but I actually ended up using the slimline one. They have a couple of different sizes that are the same pattern, so you can kind of pick what works best for you. I'm not really sure why I picked the 6x8 knowing I was doing a slimline, but anywho, they have come out with this release with these new pouncers. So they have rainbow ones and then they have neutral ones. I am using the neutral ones because I'm going to be using gray today. This basically, the purpose of this is to have a quick and easy way to add ink to intricate dies, intricate stencils. You do not rub this on, you pounce it on. That's why they're called pouncers. Like you just tap, dab, 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 tap, tap, tap. If you have any questions about these, by all means leave them below, but I will be doing a more comprehensive video on these later on this weekend. So just be aware that there will be more coming. So if you have questions, comments, whatever about them, please let me know, and then I will address them in the future video that I will be doing. But nonetheless, I wanted the background to kind of be really subtle and neutral because I didn't want to have to mask my image. So I went with the Hickory Smoke Distress ink, and I'm using it with my gray pouncer because they're coordinated and I think that's adorable. But definitely concentrating the color more so in the center and kind of letting it fade off of the edges. But I just want to be clear here. My intention is not to go very dark. You can see me tapping it off every time, because I'm going to be coloring right over it and I don't want to see the bark through my coloring. In order to just blend out the edges, I just used whatever ink was left on it and just went very quickly around the edges to kind of like blend that out and then remove my stencil, and then I can move on to my stamping. So what is the point of this video? Today, we're going to be talking about coloring ruffled flowers. These little sweet peas, as soon as I got the release, like this is the one I immediately gravitated towards because you guys know I love a good flower. And this one being more of like a stock flower, you don't really see a lot of stamps like this. So I was definitely drawn to this one. I am also trying for the first time Picket Fence's hybrid ink, which can be used with alcohol markers, which I will be coloring with today. I'll be using my Sketchmarkers. There is just something about a newly inked ink pad that is so mesmerizing when you put it on a stamp. Like, I was like, ooh, look at this pretty black. Look how pretty this is. This black is gorgeous. Because I love a bold black outline. Not everybody does, but I do. And so I really liked the ink. I didn't have any smearing, smudging, anything like that. I have not tried it with ink blending or anything like that, so I can't speak to that. But as far as stamping and coloring, it worked great. So I am stamping this down, and then I started to open it and I was like, nah, I'm going to go in with my pressure tool just real quick to go over it, just to make sure I get a good impression. And I did in one inking, so was happy with that. And now I'm going in and adding my ink blending. It's the same color. It's the Hickory Smoke around my edges. But the reason that I'm doing it after, well, I guess I do have experience with ink blending because I'm doing it right now and it didn't smudge. So also good for ink blending. But anywho, the reason that I'm doing it afterward is because I want to control how much ink I put down over the colored portion, like the image portion of the image that will be colored. So these two little buds on either side, like on the very edges of the card, I can control how much ink because I know where the bud is. If I just did the ink blending beforehand at the same time I did my stenciling, I wouldn't know how much ink I was applying over where I was going to color. And also I needed to know where to stop it because I'll be doing some green ink blending at the bottom. This is a 1-layer card. Is it a scene card? I guess it is, because there's kind of like this illusion of a tree behind it, and then I'm going to put in some grasses in the bottom. So it's like a scene card-ish, a pseudo scene card. Say that 3 times fast. But anyway, so that is why I chose to do the ink blending afterward. But if you are going to be masking it, or, you know, like, so that you wouldn't be doing any stenciling behind it or whatever, like, you wouldn't have to wait. You could do it beforehand. So the green that I chose is Mowed Lawn, and I'm just a very light application. This is just to give me a base layer for me putting my grasses on top of it with my markers, to make sure that I don't have to go in with my markers and color every square inch of this white cardstock, because I will have the little bit of green in the background that will kind of be a buffer for me. So speaking of the grasses, that is what we are going to do here. Like I said, I am using my sketch markers. I am trying to find a good balance between trying out and getting more comfortable with markers that aren't Copics. Copic markers I've been coloring with for so long. I know them and I'm very comfortable with them, and I know what my color schemes are. If I want to color something red or pink or blue, like, I know what the color combination is. I have a go-to, just because that's what I'm familiar with. Let's talk about what I'm doing in case you've never seen one of my videos before. To put the grass in, starting with my lightest color, doing a flicking motion. They don't necessarily have to be all straight up and down. They can kind of be wonky, but you do want them to be facing all the same direction. So one of your blades of grass should not be flicked down. They should all be flicked up, because grass grows up. So I'm working from my lightest out to my darkest, and then from my darkest back into my lightest, because alcohol markers are transparent and lighter colors will remove some darker colors. By going over it a second time, not only do you put more pigment down to help your blending, but you essentially create in between colors, which will give you more variation, which will give you a more natural look. So anyway, I've been trying to find a good balance between what I know and what I'm learning. And so going through, looking at the different, like, whether it's Olo or Sketchmarkers, a lot of the other companies, like, that are specifically craft companies and not specifically marker companies, for example, like Altenew, they already have their, like, when you buy the set, they're already paired together. So there isn't really any thought process for what color combinations you have to go with. These are more traditionally like a Copic marker, where you can buy individual markers and you create your own, or you can buy the sets, whichever. So let's talk about the coloring. With this drawing, there's a lot of detail lines and a more ruffled look to both the leaves and the flowers. And so sometimes when people see an image like this where it's very detailed and there's a lot of illustrative lines, they don't really know how to tackle it. With the leaves, for the most part, I'm starting with my darkest color. And the reason that I'm starting with my darkest color is because there's not a lot of real estate here. So I want to go in and lay in my shadows and then work out to my lightest color. Now you can, if you are very light-handed, you can go in with your lightest color first and then do the same thing. Work out to your darkest and then back to your lightest if you are more comfortable. Or if you're worried about bleeding, you can go in here, like this is what I'm doing here. I'm going in with one of the lighter colors and laying down my shadows, and then I'm going to go in with the darker color and go right back over that. So the lighter color is kind of like a security blanket, where it gives me an opportunity to lay in my shadows and make sure everything looks correct, that I'm adding the shadows where 2 points meet or where one object lays on top of another correctly before I commit to the darkest color in my combination. And I work with a 4-color blend, but you certainly can work with a 3-color blend. That would be fine, especially for something this size, like on this scale. The smaller items, while they are maybe a little bit more challenging to color, they definitely are easier to blend. So you probably don't necessarily need 4 colors, but I like continuity in my card, so I use the 4 colors for all of it. But When we talk about the ruffled portion of it, when you have something that is ruffled or something like pleats in clothing or things like that, you have to create peaks and valleys. And typically they are drawn that way, where you can see very clearly in the lines that one portion of the petal or leaf lays on top of another portion of the petal or leaf. So whatever piece is on the bottom, when you look at it, like you look at that line and you're like, okay, that piece is very clearly on the bottom, that is where you want to put your darkest shadows. When you are looking at it and the piece that is on top, your highlight should be on the edge of that piece that is on top, because that is what's going to give you dimension in your coloring. You have to have the darkest darks in your valleys and your lightest lights in your peaks. Otherwise, it's not going to look like it should. And this is just for like coloring a dimension and for realistic coloring. You could color this image without paying attention at all to the shadows or the light source or the peaks or any of those things, and it would still be pretty because it is a pretty image. So if you're like, Kelly, my coloring is just not at this level yet and it's not something I'm concerned about, I just want to sit and color and be stress-free, by all means, just sit down and color it. You can start by maybe just adding a little bit of shadow into the center of your flower and not worrying about the ruffles, and you still get some dimension. It doesn't have to be as involved as this is. But if you are looking to kind of just bring your coloring up to accentuate that ruffled look, this is how we're going to do it. It's with triangles. Triangles are important. And just think about them as triangles. So when I go in with my darkest color, I can see all of these lines. And from these lines, I am going to add not necessarily a ton of darkness, but just a little bit. And what ends up happening is, as you are building these lines up, they create little triangles in your petal. And so I'm just going over the lines that the illustrator has already given me with my darkest color. And then at the point where the base of the flower is, where I know that it will be the darkest because it's coming out from its stem, I may add one or two more little flicks of color. But for the most part, I'm just adding a little line to the line that's already there. Then with my next color, I'm going to go over that same line, but I'm going to extend it out a bit. And here's where you start to see like the triangles come to life. And sometimes you can see the triangles in the actual marker colors, but mostly you see the triangles in the white space. So if you look at the white space that is left over in my flowers, you see those triangles, because it's going to be darker at the base and it will be lighter as it moves out toward the tips. So we're just going to go through and start filling in those triangles. So with each color, we are going to completely cover the previous color and extend it out a little bit. So by the time we're on our second to last color, which is what we have here, our triangles are little white slivers. That is our highlight. That is the portion that we are going to color in with the lightest color, and we'll bring the whole thing full circle so that we have a ton of dimension. Like I said earlier, because alcohol markers are transparent, this lighter color will remove just a little bit of the darkness from the previous color where it touches, and everything will blend together really nicely, and we'll have clear, defined ruffles in our little flower. I am going to show you all of the flowers so you can see this multiple times, and how each time I'm just following the lines that are already there. And I am then going to the next color, covering the first color, my darkest shadow color, and just extending it out a little bit. With each portion, most of the time, you want to have that little sliver of white by the time you get to your second of last color. That doesn't always happen. For example, with this, the one that's just underneath my hand, that sweet pea, because it's kind of tucked behind this other flower, there's not going to be as much light that gets there, and so it will be a little bit darker. But that's how it would be in nature. So you don't have to stress about, oh, well, I didn't have a highlight in this area. Concentrate on just making sure that the most open, largest parts of your flower maintain a highlight. If you run out of areas to highlight in the darker areas, more like closer to the base of your flower or where one side is tucked under another, that's okay. In reality, they would not have as much light as the outer portion of the flowers where we really want to make sure we maintain a highlight. I hope that, and please, by all means, let me know if you have any questions about what it is that I'm trying to convey. I'm doing my best to explain it in a way, in a way that I feel like is easily understandable, but that doesn't mean that everybody understands things or information in the same way. And of course, it's easier to leave highlights on larger portions than it is on smaller sections of the flower. Sometimes there just isn't enough room to leave a highlight with 4 colors. And that's okay. If you find that that's too challenging, like I said, switch to a 3-color blend. It doesn't have to be 4. So for those of you that come for story time, let's have some story time while I finish coloring up these things. One thing to note just before story time, these smaller buds as we move up the top are definitely going to have less of a highlight because they are smaller and more compact. So they will just naturally be a little bit darker than their big, beautiful, blooming counterparts. So Miss Caitlin is sick again. Last night, nobody slept except for Peanut. Everybody was up. So she went to bed at like 8:30, 8:45. She was up by 9:30. She was up until 12:30. So Eric and I came up with a game plan for how we were going to tackle it. I was going to stay up with her for the first part of the night. And then if I needed to, I would wake him up if she wouldn't go back to bed. So he goes to bed. She and I stay up. We watch almost all of Frozen. And you can tell she's very sleepy, very tired. She had a little bit of oatmeal while we were up because she was up for 3 hours. I didn't lay her back down until 12:30. And then, I had to sit and wait for her to actually fall asleep. So then I got into bed. She woke up at 2. She woke up at 3:30. She woke up at 10 to 4. And then she woke up at 4:40. By the time 4:40 hit, I was cashed out because I had gotten up the morning before at 7:30. So I was like, I can't anymore. So I wake him up, he gets up, and he was like, I don't know if she threw up or what, but there's something in her sheets that's gross. Like, can you get up and handle that? So I get up, I go in there, and I don't know if it was like sinus drainage or what happened, but it almost looked like a little bit of spit up. It wasn't actual throw up. Back to the card. So here, you can back this with whatever you would like. You could do a green, you could do a gray. I chose to accentuate the color of the flowers, and so I cut mine out of plum cardstock from Hero Arts. Super love this color. Super, super love this color. And then I moved on to the sentiment. So I went in, like I said, it was like snot, but with a little bit of oatmeal in it. I'm not really sure what happened. Like if she maybe got choked or gagged on it and then spit it out. I'm not positive. But so we cleaned that up. Eric came back to bed at, I think 5:30. She was up again at 7. At some point she went back down because he came in and said, she now has spiked a fever. So she's been snotting, coughing, and now she spiked a fever. He said, I gave her some Tylenol. She's back asleep. He took Peanut to school. Normally I would be the person who took Peanut to school, but he was like, I'm home. I'll take Peanut to school. But she is here just in case you hear her crying. So then when I got up here, this is the Neutral Hearts. And this is something kind of cool. I think that maybe people don't really know. Like Picket Fence does their own embellishments. And when I say they do their own embellishments, I mean they actually put together the scoops Like they literally put together the jars. Kind of fun. So anyway, it's got some pretty little like iridescent sequins, and so I just scattered those all along my card throughout the whole card. But anyway, so when I got up, I was like, what's our situation? And he was like, she's totally fine. She's happy. She's eating pancakes. So we decided to err on the side of caution and call and make her a doctor's appointment just in case she had an ear infection or something else that we weren't aware of. So she went to the doctor. Turns out it's just the common cold, just a rough night in the Taylor household. So just alternating ibuprofen and Tylenol and all that jazz. But I mean, it's been a long time since Peanut was a baby where we were staying up all night long. And she's typically a very good night sleeper. So it's really been a long night, like for us, because we have not had a night where we had to stay up all night long like that in a long time. So it was rough. So please send up some prayers for us tonight that she feels better. Poor little baby's been sick, like basically from the womb. And that we can maybe get some sleep. That'd be great. Okay, thanks. And then that is the whole card. So just those, adding those sequins and a little bit of shimmer from a clear glitter pen to the flowers. 1-layer card. I hope that you learned something about the coloring. Again, if you have any questions about the pouncers or the coloring, leave them below and I will address them in the next video. Thank you guys so much for your time. Oh, there's an Instagram hop. I completely forgot about that. There's prizes. There's an Instagram hop. I'll link it below. Okay, catch you on the next video. Bye.